everybody. This is Kyle, and you are back watching Knockouts and Three Counts, and Corey's back joining us again as usual. And we've got the return of a guy who, if you've been following us for a little while, has been on the show a while, but it's been quite a minute. Last time we had him on was at BCWA. I forgot the event, but we have the return of No Flinch Nolan Edward. How you doing, brother man?
It's good. I'm trying to, now you mentioned what show it was on. I don't even remember at all because that was
a while
ago. That was a long time. Yeah, that was a long time ago. That's before a lot of the stuff that I've been busy with even came up.
I know, man, and that's the thing. Like when first of all, throw out your social media, let everybody know where they could find you, all that good stuff.
Everything's kind of the same. Twitter and Instagram is @ Nolan Edward. Other than that, I just highly advise people to get IWTV accounts so they can catch up on the stuff, because constantly wrestling on stuff that's uploaded to that, but can't really share it because you got to have the subscription. So I always plug social media on that.
So let's talk about that first of all. Obviously, like I said, the first time we interviewed you, it was at BCWA quite a while ago, and before you kind of got into all the stuff that you're doing right now. So first of all, I want to go back a little bit before we get to that. As I mentioned, BCWA was first. So tell me what's changed. What was it that made you decide, you know what, I'm ready to spread my wings a little bit. I need to get out of state to kind of build my name. What was it that made you make that move? Because like you just said, a lot of the times when you're wrestling now, it's been on IWTV, so you can't just share it out. You've been out of state a lot. So what prompted the move?
I guess I don't know. I'd say quickly into wrestling, I realized that wrestling in places like Ontario or anywhere around Ontario and then Michigan specifically, wrestling the same people every weekend wasn't quite fulfilling enough. I don't know. It's one of those situations where it's, if you really want to take this as serious as you can, try to get out as much as you can. And so what prompted the move would be, I actually got a job with Impact at the time that moved me down south. So that helped because now I'm completely in a new area, which led to me predominantly wrestling right now in the lower Midwest and South. So I'd say I wrestle more in Georgia and Indiana and Tennessee than anything, sparingly in Alabama and sometimes in Florida. But what prompted the move was just trying to get the name out there and then obviously finding work down there.
Well, and beyond just getting busy and like you said, finding work. Once you make that first real move, you kind of get used to being able to kind of jump around and go show to show and follow the train if as is.
Right. Yeah. So when I trying to travel in general in the first place before the move was, I don't know, it's just something that happened every once in a while. When I did move, it was like I had no choice but to try and wrestle in 3, sometimes 4 different states in one weekend. And it's just like the busy schedule kind of just became normal.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to, so I'm not upset about it by any means.
Well, you get a lot less attached to where you're actually at because it's already a new city anyway. So it's not like you're tied to doing something this weekend because you don't necessarily know anybody where you're at anyway. So ship me wherever you want because I want to stay busy on the shows,
Right. Yeah. At first it was definitely, I didn't know anybody that I wrestled with. And this is middle of the year 2019. Yes, just over a year ago. Every weekend I was wrestling in a state I'd either never been to or with people I have never met. So it was wild.
I was going to say, I'm sure
shout outs over there in the comments, Nolan.
Who?
You've got Michael E. Brown, Nolan F. and Edwards, the future of the biz, and Dylan O'Neill says the sexiest man alive, I guess.
Dylan or Michael is a guy that helped train me in kind of towards the departure I had in Flint, and I hope he's still listening. That's the best part about doing local podcasts and everything, right? Haven't talked to anybody in a while, get caught up. But he's a trainer over in Flint, and I honestly owe a lot of how I approach wrestling and how I approach character work. And anytime I need to take myself serious and try to reevaluate what I'm doing, I owe it all to how he made me view wrestling. It was that man's definitely seen me cry. He's definitely seen me be excited. So to see like he's commenting, oh, I'm glad he's listening.
So you already alluded to it. One of the big things people wanted to know about in tonight's show was your time in Impact. So first of all, before we get to your departure from Impact, tell me a little bit about how that came about and what exactly you were doing with Impact.
So how it came about was it's kind of weird because I've told a lot of people about it, but I don't really talk about it on podcasts. So it's kind of like an old story to me. But I guess it is kind of new to a lot of people. So when I joined Impact, it was because, to be completely honest, I was living out of my car training at the Can-Am Wrestling Dojo in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And I had a production background because I went to a trade school for film, and I ended up working for MTV before wrestling.
I didn't know that.
See, not a lot of people know that. It's like I always describe it as I don't, but I could have a wife and 5 kids and nobody would know because wrestling is wrestling. And I always get the wrestling aspect of my story across over anything else. But not a lot of people knew I had a production background, and then I worked for reality TV shows. So
what shows did you work with?
And I worked on Catfish and Real World.
No shit.
Yeah.
So you got to tell me, how legit is Catfish?
Oh, it's very legit. Whenever anybody asks me, because that's a frequently asked question, the only time anything was staged, so to say, was there was this one time I remember we filmed an episode where we found somebody that knew the catfisher, and this interview segments that come where they're trying to figure out more about who's catfishing the host or whoever's on the show. She didn't want to be on camera. So we had her write down what she would say, what her responses would be to Neve and Max, the host. And then we just had an actress play her. So even what was not real was real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just always wondered, man, because you never know. Like, you just see what you see on TV, and I'm like, come on, dude.
No, the wild stuff you see on TV, it's that wild. Trust me. I've been there filming it 15 feet away, and it's just fear for life sometimes, I swear.
Well, tell me a little bit about that, though. How do you feel that your background in film, how has that helped you in wrestling?
It's helped me, and then it's also not helped me at the same time. So it kind of goes back to where I was like explaining how I got the job at Impact in the first place. It got me a production job at Impact in the office in Nashville, because they knew of my situation and they've seen my work and stuff. But I've always had an edge up on storytelling, because when I went through trade school, I was a screenwriting major. And I guess trying to tell a story in any way, and like an artistic way, is what I wanted to do, which definitely helps out with wrestling. So any kind of like production or like promo or video or vignette package, I was doing them for myself, for anybody and everybody. I was doing them for Impact at times. I've done some stuff for Evolve. I've done stuff for GCW. I can't say I've done stuff, but I've done a video for GCW. It's helped me at times where I didn't have money and I had 4 shows out on the weekends I could just put out saying, hey, I'm editing a video, or like, I'm editing videos this week. Anybody need anything, come through me. And people like my work, and I've known for it, to where people are interested and they want something done by myself. So having a production background, and in that background getting into the wrestling industry, I don't want to say I had to step up with it, but I was able to realize what everybody else was doing and what I could do to be different very quickly.
It gave you something to stand out. So
in a way, yeah, because
it's an extra tool on the belt.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing a lot of cool stuff with independent wrestling, so it's kind of like, even if you think you're being original, you have to triple check yourself.
That's a damn good point and a motto to live by. So we mentioned, you were training at Can-Am and that you were living out of your car when you got to Impact. So again, you can briefly go over your role, but what was it that made you leave there? Because as we've seen, Impact has been blowing up. They've been doing their thing with Slammiversary and obviously getting people like Carl Anderson and, Gallows and all that coming over there. They're getting good names. So first of all, what were your thoughts on your time and why, and like, what made you leave?
So as far as my thoughts on my time there goes, I have to thank them for putting me in an area where I could thrive, because could I have gotten down there eventually? Yeah. But I think going down to Nashville, the time I did, I was able to meet guys that run companies like SUP, Southern Underground Pro, and New South, and Action Wrestling in Georgia, and Paradigm in Southern Indiana, and all these places. It put me in the spot where I needed to be. But at the same time, I was also, here I am putting out stuff for myself production wise, and everybody likes it. But now here I am, I gotta edit 4 video packages for Bound for Glory to open the show. It was insane, and it was definitely a test to what I could do. I was always happy with my work. I was always proud of it, but I think me being in an area where, oh my gosh, wrestling is taken so seriously, and what got me to go to Can-Am in the first place was for wrestling, but then getting a production job and not like wrestling for them and getting a production job instead of that. So here I am, like, I'm not living in my car anymore. I'm in a new area. Like, I have the Tennessee flag behind me. I'm in a new area that I'm falling in love with. I've got a bunch of people and wrestlers surrounding me that take it seriously, but I'm thriving as more than I ever have as an independent wrestler. But I got to go edit other wrestlers' promos Monday through Friday. And then sometimes you have to go to a taping or go to a Twitch stream or an Impact Plus stream when this company is running that weekend and you had a spot, but you can't go anymore. My departure kind of came up where I was like, I filmed for Evolve before. I know I've ran into you at Evolve shows in Livonia all the time, whether I was working the merch table with Cyrus or whether I was just filming ringside.
Full disclosure, our buddy Chris Bonjour, who, if you look up in the right-hand corner there when you're watching this on YouTube, you can see we just went back through Evolve 85, the first time when they came back here to Detroit. Chris Bonjour is actually the one that hit me up and said, hey, Nolan's really doing his thing out here, and said, hey, you guys should bring him back on the show. So full disclosure, the same guy that got me there and the reason you see me there is the reason why we're doing this interview. So
right, yeah, we've both been helped out by Chris immensely. I can't thank that guy enough for everything he's been doing for me and getting my name out there and giving me connections I would have never thought of. Because I just look at and this kind of ties in exactly. I just look at myself as the guy that wrestled and puts out videos, and I'm like, okay, I like them, and then I don't think anybody else is gonna like them, and then all of a sudden you got guys like Chris messaging certain companies for me where I'm like, how is this possible? Like, how am I included in this message right now? But it is. Chris was pretty huge on my departure after Impact. What led to me doing it was I told myself I wanted to become a serious professional wrestler. Like, here I am in this area. I think I can do this full time. Like, I think I can be I did this. The first show I wrestled on, I came back in 2020, I came back from a weekend in Windsor. I flew back into Nashville and I rode with a group of guys to this promotion called New South in Alabama. And I told them what I was thinking, and they said, well, to be completely honest, I think you already have your decision made, which I was kind of asking them what they thought, but all of them just said, I think you already made up your mind. And I told myself I had a advertised singles match. My first advertised singles match in the South was at Southern Underground Pro, January 5th, against Lee Moriarty. And I remember telling myself, okay, if you leave Impact, you're going to be homeless again. You're in a new state now. You're going to go right back to living out of your car. You're 20. I was 21 at the time. You're 21 years old. I'm 22 now. So is this seriously something you want to go back to do? Yeah. I was like, is this seriously something you want to go back to doing? And I remember I showed up to the venue, and I think I went to the bathroom, and I like looked in the mirror, and I told myself, if you do well tonight, because I didn't know if I was going to go back to Southern Underground Pro at all. Like if I mess this up, won't get booked. If I do it well, maybe I don't get booked, maybe not, but it's definitely something I wanted. But I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, if you do a good job wrestling today, you quit Impact Monday. And that show was a Sunday. So you quit Impact tomorrow. And then I remember telling myself, if you don't do this well, like if I mess up in this match, or this match is not good, then I'm 22. I'll be 21 years old holding a camera, filming other people's stuff. But if I do well, I'll hold the camera further down the road. Right now is the time for me to be the wrestler I want to be, instead of taking a back seat every now or then.
Hey man, I gotta respect it, because like Corey, I mean, so full disclosure, Nolan, like I said, Corey is new to the show, but he's more MMA oriented. So he's not so much the pro wrestling ilk. So a lot of times when we're bringing you guys on, I kind of have to, kind of catch him up and kind of let him know what's up with it. But like I've told you before, dude, Impact, like I said, and if you check in our past videos on our YouTube channel, we talked all about the WWE releases, bro. They're bringing in, big names over there. So for him to leave there, you're essentially leaving, I would say, the number 3 company, pretty much.
I don't think they're definitely striving. And
either way, they're one of the up and coming ones, right, nonetheless. So, I mean, it's a big move to leave, especially as a 21-year-old kid.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I gotta, not to jump back on you, but I just find it real interesting that we were initially alluding to it, and this was all organically, but we were initially, alluding to how it's a plus side that you were, producing all your own content and stuff, and then you sign on to be a wrestler, and then you end up just becoming a producer out of it. It's kind of funny how it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a positive, but then it kind of ended up working against you and what you really wanted to do with the deal.
Right. That's the best way to put it. That's kind of how I looked at it, but it took me a little bit of time to realize what I did to myself in a way. But if it wasn't,
did they ever bring up you wrestling for them?
No, it wasn't something that I even brought up. I was always just like, this is what they look at me as. And then it was more so I realized I needed to leave when I left, when I was asked to maybe not wrestle on the weekends. Like when they were like, well, you could be a producer, like instead of trying to do this wrestling thing. I actually have it written on my entrance jacket. It's in air quotes, and it says, I won't say who said it, but somebody said, I can't believe you're still trying to do this wrestling thing when here I am producing producing means like I was editing videos, and like I was there in the editing room on Final Cuts, because producing has so many different.
Well, what's your name on credits though? Was you on the scroll at the end? Because if you had producer credits to that point, you at least had a foothold in.
We didn't have, when we got on Access TV, there wasn't any like a credit roll or anything, but I was on the Wikipedia list. I was on the Wikipedia crew. So, I mean, I had that.
Right. Got his Wikipedia fame. Oh, I had my shit.
Wikipedia fame. There's no PWI 500 Nolan mention, but there is Wikipedia mention.
All right. Well, let's talk about something that has been getting mentioned a lot. As I mentioned, Chris was the one that hit me up, kind of put me on and kind of like let me know what you were doing out there. Because like you said, I mean, you haven't been in Michigan wrestling as much. So I didn't really know what you were doing outside of what I've seen on social media, because I had talked to him from what I've seen as well. Because as you mentioned, you and I got to kick it a lot at Evolve and places like that, which I don't know if you and I remember. I think I remember the last time I remember seeing you at Evolve was right after we ended up in Bleacher Report because of Darby Allin.
I would no, maybe that's when I worked a merch table, because the last time I remember getting in trouble for this, the last time I filmed for Evolve was the last Livonia show they did, because I was I was employed by Impact. And
but you were shooting for Evolve, who's associated with WWE.
We had an Impact taping in Dayton, Ohio, and then Detroit on a Saturday and Sunday, but Evolve was in town Friday, and I paid to do the Evolve tryout, and then a gentleman named J Rock got it on the show out of all the tryouts, and then they needed somebody to film ringside, and I've done it for them before, so they were like, "Hey Nolan, do you mind doing this?" And I was like, "No, not at all." And so I remember showing up the next day, and then being sternly talked to about how I was working for that company and then filming for Evolve, which is tied in with a completely other company.
Crossing all the big lines, but like I said, you were talking about things that people can find. Okay, the first big thing that I would say really that I saw that really was like, damn, all right, this dude's really, getting himself out there, was your appearance at the IWTV pay-per-view for Heavy Hitters. So tell me a little bit about that match. And like you just said, man, and that's one of the things I know you wanted to talk about, Corey, was his upcoming schedule. So tell me a little bit about, these shows that you're getting to work on IWTV, what's your experience been like with it, and just give us your overall thoughts on it.
So Corey will like this. There's this promotion. I mentioned it earlier when I mentioned some of the promotions I wouldn't have been able to get to if I didn't move. Paradigm Pro Wrestling is ran by it's ran by a lot. It's a hodgepodge group of promoters, and I am lucky enough to try my hat in it and promote the pre-shows for the show. So it's not just a good show, but what you don't see is also good. That when you're walking in and there's some guys wrestling, they earned it, and I made sure that they got those spots. But Corey will like it. So we recently, I can't say we, but they recently started doing like heavy hitter tournaments and UWFI tournaments and shoot style wrestling. Like we have Stephen Bonner on shows. We have Tom Lawler, even though he's more kind of a wrestler now with MLW and everything, but we have an upcoming
Tom Lawler
show.
is still Tom Lawler, dude. I got to see him throw down at MLW in New York and got to chat with him about coming on the show. So Tom, if you check this shit out, brother, the door is always open.
We have Dan Severn coming in later. We have a important match coming up where it's Tom Lawler versus Stephen Bonner, and there was a joke about it being an eye for an eye match. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure, but I'm going to be there to watch it either way. But at Heavy Hitters, it was the first live streamed IWTV show, because if you're not familiar with IWTV, you can upload stuff or you can have a live stream spot, kind of like similar to a pay-per-view. It was Paradigm's first live stream, so to say. And it definitely was where I got the most eyes put on me during quarantine. I started getting eyes on myself because SUP does live streams when I wrestle guys like Lee Moriarty and Big Beef at SUP. And then, but Paradigm had their first live stream where I wrestled Kevin Koo, who also recently just got signed to MLW. It was kind of like a showing out party. And in the main event, since I beat Kevin Koo, I was able to wrestle for a little bit Tom Lawler before I ended up getting kicked in the temple enough to where I just got knocked out. But Heavy Hitters was a huge tournament, so I'm excited that Paradigm is going to still have live stream spots on IWTV coming up, because there's the next show that we have coming up is the 3rd anniversary on September 25th, where I get to
my birthday.
Is it really?
Hell yeah. So you got to fucking win.
I'm wrestling Dominic Guarini. I'm wrestling Dominic Guarini. I'm having a shoot match with Dominic Guarini because it's a UWFI rules match. And I don't really know how to explain it. It's just going to be carnage, but that'll be my second encounter with Dominic Guarini at the Paradigm 3rd anniversary.
So what are your thoughts on that, though? Because for those who don't know, I tried to fill Corey in a little bit, but again, I like to do my research on these things because I try not to be a dummy when I get on here. But
Right.
I've been watching Dominic Guarini for a while in MLW. I'm also aware that he has a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. So do I. But I've been watching him for a long time. They've had him teamed up with Tom Lawler and them as well as part of Team Filthy and things like that. But one thing I didn't know until I did my research, which is very interesting, that he was trained by Johnny Gargano and Candice
LeRae. Yeah, that's true.
That's a wild mix. You got a guy who's fighting straight up, but then has got one of the biggest baby faces, even though you can say he's a heel right now. Johnny Gargano will always be a baby face, but right. I digress. But yeah, man, I mean, that's quite the match for you. And like you said, it's UWFI rules. So what are your thoughts on that? And obviously you've already gotten to tangle it up with Dom. So what are your thoughts on it in the UWFI rules?
To be completely honest, I think the first time me and Dom wrestled, obviously there's pins in normal matches. There's not in UWFI rules, but I wouldn't separate the two much because whenever you wrestle Dom, it's very much so you can walk in as confident as you want, but it's his match. Like he's gonna, you can't, it's hard to get him to stray away from how he was trained because that's his life, you know, Brazilian jiu-jitsu and pro wrestling and combining the two. So if anything going into it, I really just have to think about what didn't go right for me the first time we wrestled and try to change that.
So how do you win this match then?
Knocking him out. I feel like that's my only option.
All right, you heard it here first. If you're going to be checking out Paradigm Pro Wrestling, we need to see Nolan Edwards get a knockout. But that leads me into another question that I got for you. So you're talking about knocking people out. I also see that you've got a new nickname to you, No Flinch Nolan Edwards.
Yeah.
So tell me where the hell that comes from. And you're going to need not to flinch if you're going to be going against a guy like Dom Guarini. So tell me a little bit about that.
So the No Flinch nickname came to be by everybody else. I wrestled at this show called Action Wrestling in Tyrone, Georgia. And which I'm just coming off a weekend back down in Georgia again this past weekend where I had what is being called the most violent match in action wrestling history. Myself against Angelus Lane in a just normal match. But I got the No Flinch nickname from a guy named Sobro Mose, who has his own podcast down there in Nashville. And he's huge in the independent wrestling scene down in the South. I went on his podcast and he said, when you got hit in the back at Action this past weekend, you didn't flinch. So we got to call you No Flinch Nolan. And I wrestled at Paradigm the next weekend, and it was Jay Rose, who you've probably seen at GCW and Black Label Pro and all these places doing his thing. He does ring announcing for Paradigm. He's one of the guys with his name in the hat there. He called me No Flinch Nolan Edward without me telling him to. And then, so it caught on. And then I wrestled at SUP the weekend after that. And Righteous Jesse, the ring announcer there, on the top of his lungs, screaming No Flinch Nolan Edward. And at that point, I just kind of had to go with it. I was like, okay, this is just one of those things you can't change. Which has
you
since
like the name at least?
Ooh, it's a given. It's a given. If you when you watch my wrestling, you have no choice but to think, okay, wow, yeah, he's not flinching. So I'm notorious for taking the forehead chop and asking for more. That's whenever anybody that has never seen me wrestle sees me wrestle for the first time, I always get told that I am associated with me taking forehead chops.
Well,
interesting, but it fits the No Flinch gimmick. I mean, it's not a gimmick; it's real life. So,
two parts actually. I mean, from what I did my digging, preparing for the interview myself, it seemed like you were the one giving a lot of the chops, man. It looks like you were out there slapping up some fools.
That's just how it. The best way for me to put this is, I chose a business where every time they tell you how to approach it, they tell you that this is a work, but I'm not here to work. I'm here to shoot.
I like it, dude. Hey, man, nut up or shut up. But
Exactly.
You've alluded to them twice now. You've alluded to Action Pro. What the fuck is it that you've got going on with Action Pro?
So coming off the cusp of, they had a doubleheader this past weekend. I'm on both shows, and I know we've mentioned IWTV before. Now is a good time for me to plug what's going on with Action. The 2 shows that I was on are dropping this Sunday and next Sunday, where you can watch the most violent match in Action Pro Wrestling history, which gave me the opportunity to announce what I can finally announce, because I've been waiting to, is October 2nd at, I want to remember, I believe it's also a doubleheader, but one of the shows, October 2nd, I finally get to face off of a man that I have literally filmed ringside for, that you've watched at Evolve shows. You finally
we've got history with JD Drake. I'll get to
that. Yeah,
you
finally get to see JD Drake versus Nolan Edward in an Action wrestling ring for the first time. I'm glad it finally gets to happen. He's definitely helped me and get my name out there, because he's just a good guy. He recognizes people that work hard, but now instead of filming ringside, I get to be in the ring with JD Drake. So,
all right, that's a barn burner of a match. All right, Corey, when we get out of here, I'm going to have you go check out JD Drake, because for the way that man looks, he shouldn't be able to do the things that he does athletically. I'm a big fan of JD Drake. I've made no bones about that. But like I said, we've got history with Mr.
You two
Drake.
got history. You two have history.
We have some history, okay? So for those of you who are new to the show, like we said, the reason why me and Chris Bonjour know each other is because he's the one that was bringing us interviews like that one you can check out there in the top right corner when we interviewed now WWE superstar Austin Theory ahead of his match with JD Drake when they faced off at the Evolve 10th anniversary special, which you can watch on the WWE network. But we're not here to talk about WWE. We're here to talk about the fact that I called out JD Drake. He accepted my challenge, but then he got hurt doing what we were going to do in the challenge. He was bowling and hurt himself while he was bowling. So I know bowling alleys may not be open here in Michigan, but hey, I ain't scared. So JD Drake, if you hear this, I still got to go with Nolan to win this match here, since you still haven't come on the show yet. But hey, that door is wide open, sir. And anytime you want to come on to chat about it, we'd love to have you. But in the meantime, like I said, challenge still stands, kind sir. Blue collar hero, all that good shit. Let's see if you can beat me, and maybe we'll have to have some good food on the line. But I digress.
You gotta have a bowl. You gotta bowl with JD before that man gets signed, because just the fact that I get to wrestle him, I'm like, ooh, don't you dare get signed before then, because I know it's coming soon.
Oh, dude, that guy, if that guy isn't signed by the end of 2020 or early 2021, it's a fucking crime. Quite frankly, I'm surprised he didn't show up on NWA before it went down the hole, because I don't know why. I feel like he fits perfect there. But
right.
I don't know, man. Like I said, this guy, for anybody who hasn't watched it, great guy to watch in the ring, and it's a definite step up for you to be facing him. So we talked about JD Drake. Let's talk about what you're doing at Mr. Chainsaw Pro Wrestling. You've got quite the interesting match on that one, which again is going to be live on IWTV and IWTV if you're checking this out. Hey. But anyways, you're going to be facing Effie. So you've got quite the array of like different opponents that you're going to be facing here. You've got legit badass and Dom Guarini. You've got the blue collar hero and JD Drake. And now you just go to the complete opposite side of the spectrum. And now you're going to be facing Effie. So first of all, Corey is unfamiliar with him, and I feel like a lot of, not so heavy fans may know about him as much. So can you give us a little bit of a background on your opponent, at least of what you've seen of him, and what are your thoughts on the match and what's going to happen at Mr. Chainsaw Pro Wrestling?
If I had to give Corey, if I had to give you a background on Effie, if you've never had a daddy before, you'll find yourself calling a grown man daddy. Effie is by far the leader of all things pure and independent wrestling, depending on how you look at it. He is, in my opinion, having talked to the guy, probably the most entertaining professional wrestler out there right now, in the locker room and in the ring. And so the fact that I get to wrestle him at Chainsaw this Saturday, I got to stick to myself. This man, there's a promo up on Mr. Chainsaw right now where this is at the Action Show after I wrestled Angelus and Kevin Ryan on the doubleheader, where I'm hanging out with TV's Nasty Leroy. And Effie comes up and Effie's convinced that he can make me flinch on social media, everything. Yesterday on Effie's Twitch stream, this man is talking about trying to make me flinch. He saw me wrestle Kevin Koo, and I think when he realized that I beat Kevin Koo, he was a little terrified. So if anything you can expect out of this match is Effie's going to try and make me flinch, but I think I can terrify Effie at his own game.
Well, we're going to have to tune in, and you'll have to tune in to IWTV to check this out. It's going down in Kalaska, Michigan for Mr. Chainsaw Pro Wrestling. Hey, there's multiple of our past guests are on there, like the DTA boys that are going to be doing their thing down there. They're past guests of the show from BCWA, along with Aaron O'Ryan, who you can check out his interviews in the corner, as well as we talk about Wyatt Strong, his son's battle with cancer, and all that good stuff. But like I said, this show is going to be stocked with past guest show from knockouts and 3 counts. So like I said, man, you don't want to miss this. All right. So we've talked about all these things that you've got going on in the busy schedule that you're going to be keeping. Now that you've gotten to work a couple shows since we're in this pandemic era of wrestling, or whatever the hell it is that you want to call it, first of all, what are your thoughts on the shows that you've gotten to work so far, and what do you think independent wrestling could look like as we come out of this?
I think I've definitely wrestled on my fair share of shows that have done everything correct, and I've definitely wrestled on shows that were lenient, and I won't be going back to those shows. I think right now is an awkward and stressful time for independent wrestling and just wrestling as a whole, because you've got independent shows based off their schedule and booking, trying to run shows as professional as like WWE or AEW or Impact or all those other companies are. They're trying to do it by the same standard with all the protocols and procedures. And I've felt the most comfortable in locker rooms that I ever have, like at Action, Paradigm, everywhere I've been. As far as what I think independent wrestling can look like after this, I think it's time, as much as there will always be independent mainstays, I think now is the time where you are being force-fed the next generation of independent wrestlers, with companies like Paradigm going live and getting lots more eyes on them, with companies like AIW, GCW, ICW New York still streaming. You're really getting to see, like, okay, here's who's been striving and working hard. Now's their chance. It's like they're available. And now this promotion is having more eyes on them because people are kind of forced to watch from home with limited crowds. So now everybody that's maybe not been seen as much as they'd like have been being seen. So like guys like me getting able to get on busy shows, like for some odd reason, I have a busier schedule now than I did pre-quarantine. So that helps me, and I'm not the only one. So I think the next step for independent wrestling, and what you're going to see come out of this, is just a whole new generation of the future of independent wrestling.
I think we're seeing that a lot. Like Kyle was referring to earlier, I kind of covered more of the MMA side of the spectrum of the show.
Yeah.
But that being said, you're seeing that with a lot of the up and comers and the guys that are, not only presented the opportunity, but are rapidly pushing even during the pandemic to try to get fights and line things up and stay busy. You're seeing them get that opportunity. I mean, a lot of people are calling and trying to, now that things are opening back up and kind of getting rolling again, the phones are ringing,
I know I can't say I'm a huge follower of UFC, but I do know that with what UFC is doing, there's a lot of new fighters getting chances from what I've heard.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing to bring up. I mean, for those of you who tune into the show for the wrestling, and make sure you check it out, because LFA, the same as IWTV, is doing, on the independent wrestling scene. LFA is one of the feeders for the UFC. So all during pandemic, they've been running fights on UFC Fight Pass. We've had somebody pretty much off of every card that they've ran, including our interview with Darius Solo Beast Estelle, who's going to war this Friday. Like I said, we just dropped that interview yesterday. But, you're seeing a lot of that with fights, but not only with fights, but with wrestling. And it's crazy. With you wrestling other places, you're a good person to ask about this. One thing that the pandemic has also created, like you said, along with opportunity for other guys, a lot of guys from Michigan have finally been getting a little bit of light here. At least on the MMA end, we've had a lot of guys that have been going with UFC. Mr. Chainsaw, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that in Kalaska, Michigan?
Kalkaska, yeah, like 3.5 hours up north. Yeah.
So I mean, maybe not in like the Detroit metro area, but I'm just saying, more guys from Michigan you're starting to see on bigger shows. So it's really been, Michigan has had its hands out both in the wrestling end and on the MMA end. So, we were talking about Twitch streams. We were talking about video games. What kind of video games does Flinch Nolan Edwards mess with?
Oh, man. So I only mess with my Nintendo Switch.
All right.
Believe it or not. Yeah. So true interesting story. When I first started wrestling, the first set of gear I had, I got it paid for because I sold my PlayStation. I sold my PlayStation for my first set of gear. It was a $50 pair of kick pads and like a $60 pair of biker shorts. And it was off of this place called eLucha. Everybody knows what eLucha is in the wrestling industry. But I sold my only escape to video games over 2 years ago, and I bought my Switch a month ago. I had a show in Florida that I was getting flown out to, and I don't know what it was. I'm a huge Zelda fan. I played Zelda growing up my entire life, and not having a Switch felt like I was missing out. So I bought the Switch specifically for long car rides and plane rides to and from shows to play. But the Switch is the first game console I've owned in over 2 years. So the amount I have been playing it is insane.
He's having video game withdrawals, bro.
It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad, but it's good because, like I said, I'm playing Breath of the Wild, so that's a long game to play.
All right, man. So before we let you get out of here, I'm going to give you, the floor is yours. If you've got any last words for anybody who's new to Nolan Edward, or more specifically for any of your opponents, whether that's JD Drake, whether that's Effie, whether that's Dom Guarini, the floor is yours. Let them know what they can expect, sir.
So this Saturday, Mr. Chainsaw Pro Wrestling, catch the replay on IWTV. Nolan Edward versus Effie for the first time anywhere. Paradigm Pro Wrestling on IWTV live September 25th, the 3rd anniversary. Nolan Edward versus Dominic Guarini for the second time, first time in UWFI rules. The next day, live on IWTV as well, Unsanctioned Pro. I can't announce what match I'm in yet, but just know that there's going to be some fuckery going on at a company that's called Unsanctioned Pro. So people that are familiar with Nolan Edward being a hardcore wrestler, this is, if that's what you like watching me for, you're going to like this show. Complex Wrestling on the 27th. That's a long weekend. Sage Phillips. I'm in a futures tournament, the Scenic City Invitational Futures Tournament, October 2nd, the day before my first encounter with JD Drake. If anybody that knows my wrestling career and what I wanted out of it, it was to wrestle in a tournament. So being able to be in the heavy hitters tournament, it didn't end up how I wanted it being knocked out by Tom Lawler. But now I think I'm a little bit more familiar with tournaments, and now I get to go in the futures, which is huge in the South. It's big. And then the Collective. So the Collective is returning. GCW's Collective live on Fight, pay-per-view. I have a chance to wrestle AJ Gray at Southern Underground Pro day 1 at 4 p.m. And then the last day at 11:30 at night, Sunday, October 11th, I believe, 11:30 at night, Paradigm Pro Wrestling. Like before I mentioned, I can't say what match I'm in yet, but if you like death matches, you get to see Nolan Edward in a death match. Can't say against who is happening. As far as the future of it, just pay attention to social media. Like I said earlier, I'm always posting stuff. I'm always going to be posting content. Like, I have no choice. It just comes natural. Editing a video, if I'm not editing a video, I feel weird. So, as far as anything else, I'm just know that I'm going to have the busiest 30 days of my entire career. And it starts this weekend with Effie.
Well, Corey, you got anything else before we let our guest out of here?
One quick question. You said you've been running, or at least now you're starting to. Have you had the chance to get in any of these shows with a limited capacity crowd?
Yeah. So Action Wrestling and Paradigm, a lot of the shows running right now are outdoors, but Action Wrestling and Paradigm are both indoor places. They run indoors only. So all the Action shows are in front of a 35 crowd. There's capped at 35 fans, which is different because the first time I wrestled at Action, there was close to 300 people there. So it's something that it took some time to get used to. Paradigm is also capped at a certain number, running in Southern Indiana, following that state's guidelines. But like I said before, I've never felt unsafe at any of the shows I've mentioned. So it's weird, but we get to wrestle, we get to have the shows uploaded and they get streamed or they're live. If anything, it's a more personal wrestling environment feeling for the fans. And we also have more viewers from home. So just the fact that we get to wrestle still, that's the only thing that I'm worried about.
And at least with a limited capacity, at least you still have some people in attendance that make noise, give the oohs and the ahs, kind of give the background.
I can't say it enough. I believe September 20th is a Sunday. Sunday, September 20th, Action Wrestling, the Matt Sells Tonight show premieres on IWTV. Myself versus Angelus Lane, my favorite match I've ever had in the 2.5 years I've been wrestling. With 35 people there, we had I don't know how long it was, felt like forever, but I had the most intense match of my entire life. So even though there was 35 people there, it's go time. Like if you stay ready, you don't got to get ready. I know a lot of my friends say that, so it feels weird to say it, but if you stay ready, you don't got to get ready. So with 35 people there, you're getting the same Nolan, and it's not just me. With 35 people there, you're getting the same anybody that's on those shows than if there was any number of fans there.
Well, Corey, does that answer it for you?
That basically covers it for me. Other than, when do you think we might be getting around? I mean, obviously no one knows when the world's getting back to normal, but any idea when we might see a little more turnaround with the crowds?
As far as I know, it's all open to states. So every state has those, like, whether it's a commission state or not, every state has its own guidelines. I don't know the numbers specifically, but it's also kind of like the promotions and if they're comfortable. Outdoor shows are thriving right now, but you can't run an outdoor show every weekend out of the year. So
especially not in Michigan.
Especially not in Michigan. I heard it's snowing in Montana or somewhere already. What was that?
As somebody who's done production before, even though you were on more of the media end, it sounded like there's a lot that goes into setting up the events, and if it was to get rained out or something like that, I mean, that'd be a real hit, you know. So
right, it takes
a lot to get those matches set up for the risk of something to happen. Just in order to be able to fit a little more people in an outside venue, you know.
Yeah, there was a little scare at this past weekend's AIW GCW doubleheader. It started to sprinkle a little bit, but I think they just went to a quick intermission because there was no match going on. They covered the cameras and they kept going, and then it stopped raining, fortunately. But yeah, as far as it goes with more people inside, I believe it's just up to the state and the governor's decisions on capacity limits, and then also if that promotion's comfortable running that way for their fans and wrestlers.
Any way it goes, man, we've cleared it up that this man is about to be a busy son of a bitch coming up in the next month. Make sure you're checking him out on IWTV. Anywhere of these shows are going to be, again, they'll be listed on all of our social media. Make sure you follow us at KO3C Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the great interviews, not only on the wrestling side, but on the MMA side. So until next time, and in the in-between time, peace.
Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
guys.